So now you want to put everything back together. I grab my new tire and I check the direction of the tread. Imagine that the wheel is already on the bike and make sure that the arrow on the side of the tire will be pointing forward as the bike would roll forward. Not all tires are directional, so you may not have an arrow on yours. After I determined the direction to install the tire, I'll slide it around the rim until the PSI marking is close to your valve stem opening on the rim. This step isn't necessary, but I find it helpful to quickly locate the max PSI when inflating my tire later. Now I'll start at one end. I'll slide one side of the tire into the rim and work my way around until that side is completely seated. Now you're ready for your tube. Go ahead and take it out of the box and remove any cap or washer that may be on the valve stem. Toss that away, you don't need it. Next, I like to put just a little puff of air into the new tube so that it's not stuck together and it's a little bit easier to work with. Just a little bit, one squirt is enough, maybe even letting a little bit out. Then I'll slide the valve stem into the hole in the rim and tuck the whole tube underneath the tire, making sure that it's not twisted and it's as flat as it can be. Once you're happy with the way the tube is sitting between the rim and the tire, you're ready to close the tire over the tube. Start at the valve stem, slide the remaining side of the tire into the rim. Make sure your tube isn't getting pinched between the tire and the rim as you do this. Work both sides at the same time as you make your way around the wheel. When you get to the side opposite the valve stem, it may become a little difficult. Continental brand tires are notorious for being difficult here. My tire slid on like butter because it's an Old Faithful. Before I put air back into my tire, I make sure once again that the tire is facing the correct direction. I'll loosen the valve stem and attach the pump. Pump that tire up to whatever PSI you want. If you're riding on a flat surface, the max PSI is a good bet. But if you're doing some gravel or off-roading, you may find that you'll have a smoother ride if you deflate your tires a bit. Additionally, if you find that your tire bead isn't seating properly in your rim, that is, if there seems to be a lump in the tire, even at the max PSI, continue to add air until the tire pops into place or until you've added twice the max PSI. Of course, deflate the tire back to the max PSI after the tire bead is seated. Release the pump from the valve in one quick motion and close the valve. Now you're ready to put the wheel back on your bike. Slide the hub back into the frame. These spaces are called track ends, but you may hear them referred to as dropouts, which is actually a term associated with derailleurs and not present on Little 5 bikes. So slide the chain back over the sprocket and then over the chain ring. Slide the chain tensioner back onto the track end. At this point, return the nut and bolt to the reaction arm, but don't tighten it. With one hand, pull the wheel back as you make sure it's seated straight in the frame. You'll know you're pulling back enough when you don't have very much play in the chain. Use your fingers to tighten the nuts on either side of the hub, then your 15mm wrench. To avoid throwing the wheel back out of alignment, be sure not to crank down on one side all at once, but switch sides until the bolts are secure. Now don't put all your force into this. You don't want to strip the bolt or mess up your sweet paint job. Next, use your 10mm wrench to tighten the chain tensioner. Ideally, you'll want 1 inch of vertical play in the chain. Finish off by securing your reaction arm. Make sure this is good and snug because this is your stopping power. A few notable points: your tubes will lose air given time, so it's smart to check your pressure before you do any serious riding. Also, the nuts on either side of the hubs of the Little 5 bikes like to loosen themselves, so it's a good idea to check these too. Likewise, you may find that your chain becomes loose as well. Such is the nature of these bikes. Anyways, thanks for sticking with me through this 3-part video, and hopefully by the time I make my next one, I'll be better at using iMovie.